Tonight, we delve into a case that blurs the line between a routine inspection and a descent into madness. This is the story of a contractor, a vacant house, and the recording that captured his terrifying discovery. It all began on a quiet suburban street, in a house that had been empty for years. The contractor, let's call him Mark, was hired to assess the property for renovation. The upper floors were unremarkable dust sheets, peeling wallpaper, the usual signs of neglect. But the basement? The basement was different. The job was simple. Check the foundation, look for water damage, and report back. Mark grabbed his flashlight and a digital voice recorder, a standard practice for documenting his findings. He pulled open the basement door, revealing a steep, narrow flight of wooden stairs disappearing into the darkness below. A damp, earthy smell rose to meet him, thick and heavy, like soil that had never seen the sun. He started down, his boots heavy on the old wood. Each stair creaked beneath his weight, the sound echoing longer than it should have. As if the space below were deeper, more vast than the house's footprint could possibly justify. The air grew colder with each step, a stark contrast to the mild autumn day outside. Halfway down, he stopped. He heard something. Breathing. It wasn't just one person. It was several. A chorus of overlapping, strained, uneven breaths. They sounded close. Far too close. A knot of unease tightened in his chest. He tried to rationalize it: the wind, old pipes, his own imagination playing tricks on him in the dark, flare. But the sound was too distinct, too organic. It was the sound of life, but a life that was struggling. He continued his descent, the pressure in his chest intensifying, the air growing heavier, almost suffocating. The lower he went, his flashlight, held in a trembling hand, cut a nervous beam across bare concrete walls, revealing nothing but shadows that danced and fled from the light. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement opened into a wide, low-ceilinged room. Exposed wooden beams ran overhead. The cold concrete floor seemed to suck the warmth from his boots. The air was still and frigid. The breathing sounds were fainter here, almost gone, replaced by an oppressive silence. Mark began his inspection, running the beam of his flashlight along the walls, checking for cracks or signs of moisture. And that's when he saw them. The marks. At first, he thought they were just smudges or water stains. But as he moved closer, their true form became horrifyingly clear. They were handprints, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pressed into the hard concrete of the walls. They were layered over one another, fingers stretched and smeared downwards, as if countless people had tried to claw their way through solid stone. Some prints were small, like those of a child. Others were large and masculine. And some looked wrong. The fingers were elongated, twisted at unnatural angles, as if the hands that made them had been violently pulled away while still pressing desperately against the wall. Whose own breathing became shallow and ragged, and the tiny microphone on his recorder faithfully captured every panicked, uneven inhale. He backed away from the wall of hands, his heart hammering against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to run back up those stairs and never look back. But a morbid, professional curiosity or perhaps something more sinister kept him there. He had to understand what he was seeing. He swept his light across the rest of the room, past old rusted pipes and cobwebs thick as cotton. And then, in the far corner of the basement, partially hidden behind a forgotten metal shelving unit, he noticed something that didn't belong. It was a line. A thin, perfectly vertical seam in the concrete wall, almost invisible in the gloom. It wasn't a crack from settling. It was too straight, too deliberate. It looked like a door where no door should ever be. He approached it slowly, each step feeling like he was wading through molasses. With every foot closer, the breathing sounds returned, louder and more distinct than before. Always in desperate chorus coming from directly behind that wall. The pressure in his chest tightened until his vision began to blur at the edges. He reached out a hesitant hand, his fingers brushing against the cold, gritty concrete next to the seam. As if responding to his presence, the seam widened. It didn't happen suddenly. It was a gradual, sickening process. The concrete slid apart with a wet, grinding sound, like stone being dragged through mud. The gap revealed a space inside that should not have existed. It was a narrow corridor, barely wide enough for a single human body to squeeze through. The walls inside were not smooth concrete. They were raw, brutal surfaces, scraped and carved and gouged by what could only be fingernails, a testament to sheer desperation. The floor was worn smooth, polished by the frantic shuffling of feet, by people trying to turn around in a space where turning was impossible. The breathing was deafening now. It was coming from within that impossible corridor, right in front of him. He could almost feel the hot, stale air of it on his face. He froze, paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt physical. And then a voice spoke from the darkness. "I'm still here." It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a scream. A simple, chilling statement of fact, spoken in a voice devoid of all emotion. That was the breaking point. The contractor Mark stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet and slamming hard into the metal shelving unit. The shelves rattled, and his voice recorder clattered to the floor. It landed face up, its small red lights still blinking, still running, still listening to the unfolding horror. As he scrambled to his feet, the corridor shifted. The wet, grinding sound returned as the walls of the hidden passage pressed closer together, sealing the entrance once more. And in that terrifying moment, as the seam vanished, a horrifying realization clicked into place in his mind. The house wasn't killing people. It was collecting them. It was storing them. That single soul-shattering thought broke whatever control he had left. He ran. He didn't look back. He just ran for the stairs. When investigators reviewed the tape later, there's a long stretch of silence on the recording, broken only by Mark's frantic, ragged breathing and the echoing slap of his boots on the concrete floor. He reached the base of the stairs, but something was wrong. They seemed closer together than before. The steps were shorter, shallower, as if the entire basement had somehow pulled itself upward, shrinking the distance to the door above. He didn't care. He climbed anyway, his lungs burning, his chest feeling like it was caught in a vice. The pressure was unbearable now, a physical force wrapping itself around his ribs and squeezing, slowly, relentlessly. He could feel it. Something was following him. He couldn't hear footsteps. It was a different kind of movement. A sliding, grinding shift from behind him. The sound of the very walls rearranging themselves with a cold, malevolent purpose. The house was changing. It was hunting him. He clawed his way up the last few steps, his vision tunneling. As his hand reached the doorknob, the basement door slammed shut on its own, right in his face. The boom echoed through the silent house like a final, unappealable verdict. He fumbled with the knob, expecting it to be locked, trapped. But this time, it turned eyes. He burst out of the basement and didn't stop. He scrambled through the kitchen, through the dusty living room, and flung himself at the front door. It opened without resistance. He collapsed onto the front porch, gulping at the cool night air, dragging in breath after breath that finally felt clean, that finally felt real again. He lay there for a long time, his body trembling uncontrollably. When he finally found the strength to look back, the house stood silent and dark against the night sky. No lights, no sound, as if nothing had ever happened. He never went back to that house. He quit his job the next day and moved out of the state. The recording is all that remains of his experiencer chilling audio document of a house that doesn't just have ghosts, but keeps a collection. Thank you for listening. If this story sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tailies from the edge of reality. Stay safe out there.